I am going to be talking just a little bit about weighing in on the difference between eating disorders and disordered eating. I'm actually a registered nurse as well as a life coach. I've been a registered nurse for the last 19 years. And I work at an eating disorder treatment facility, a 56-bed facility near Salt Lake City, Utah, which is about 6 hours from Las Vegas. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to weigh in on 3 important collaborative signs to discuss the intersection between hypermobile EDS, HSD, POTS, and MCAS, and then the correlation and crossover with eating disorders. I told you a little bit about myself here. I also facilitate recovery groups at Center for Change. One of them is the adolescent recovery group, and the other one is a day patient group where I meet with patients from 12 up to, I think our oldest patient on the day patient level was 65, and I don't have any disclosures. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take questions. You can find me here, or you can email me. Right here is my contact. So I wanted to start with this picture. How many zebras do you see in this picture? I took my husband and I took my son to the zoo last week. Anybody want to shout out? 4, 6, 7. Here we are. So there are 7. So whoever said 7, I'll give you a treat afterwards. So 7 zebras here. So for myself, let me go back just a little bit. So I was diagnosed with hypermobile EDS when I was 19, back in the 90s. And I was diagnosed by my orthopedic surgeon after I had dislocated my knee pretty severely. I had had several subluxes. I had had symptoms of MCAS since kindergarten and POT symptoms since junior high. My sister, my mom, aunts, cousins, several of us have hypermobile EDS. It is a challenging road, and I really am so grateful for the EDS Society and for the resources that that's benefited me and is benefiting so many. So I'm really grateful. We are going to discuss today addressing eating disorders and connecting, this is done a little bit with some of the previous presentations, but connecting physical, emotional, psychological, and mindfulness and spirituality when treating eating disorders. So we're going to only discuss 3 different types of eating disorders today. There are many eating disorders we could discuss, but I'm only going to talk about the 3 that connect the most with the symptoms for this conference. I am going to also talk about some statistics that may be helpful to those struggling with body image and disordered eating, and also some tools that may be helpful if you're struggling as well, emotional tools. Connecting also with Jeannie, the mindfulness and the spirituality and connecting mind and body is so critical in healing from anything, and especially connected to EDS and eating disorders. The ways that we numb are human, and some types of eating disorders are, I would say, a way that we numb is body image can be a distraction. And we'll talk a little bit about body image and disordered thoughts as well. So let's talk a little bit about nature versus nurture. We've got 2 trees, and they say, what are we supposed to do with it? Beats me, and you've got a little baby down here. So when you think about eating disorders and nature versus nurture, nature loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger often. Now, there'll be some caveats with avoidant restrictive intake disorder with ARFID, but with anorexia and bulimia and binge eating disorder, this is where nature loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So eating disorders are not just about food or bodies. They're a symptom of something greater. Again, I talked about all different ways that we try and numb or not feel. Sometimes when we feel not enough, unlovable, unheard, we question our worth, It can be an easy way that can trigger eating disorder behaviors. So if you want to play, this is Mary, and we're going to watch a little video. So here's a trigger warning. This does show a little bit about eating disorders, and it does show a couple of pictures of this woman when she was not well. So trigger warning, I'll give you just a minute if you want to not watch this. It's about a 3-minute video, and it's from the Dove Foundation, the Dove Self-Esteem Foundation. Okay, go ahead and play it.
And let's sit down and I will read you a book.
You are so beautiful to me.
Good job, Mary.
You are so
Hello, for Mary and Addie's comedy show.
to me. Can't you see, dear Mary? Everything I hoped for. You're everything I need. You are so beautiful to me. You are so beautiful.
You want a small waist this summer when your favorite product is here. Alright, that's it.
To me. Can't you see? Everything I hoped for. You're everything I need.
Get yourself a tape measure, thigh gaps are in.
You are so beautiful to me.
The cost
You
of toxic
are
beauty content
so
is greater than we
beautiful
think.
to me. Can't you see? You're everything I hope for, everything I need.
You are so beautiful to me. Can't you see?
Social media is harming the mental health of 1 and 2 kids. I support Dove.com in this. They have several videos on self-esteem and social media and body image, and I think it's fantastic. So, looking at Mary, that's just one story. Many of us have stories in different areas of our life, and I actually have a story. I was a patient at Center for Change 25 years ago, and I chose to work there as a nurse 6 years later. And that's why I run some of these groups of healing and hope for these patients. It's an incredible job, and healing and hope is possible. 100% recovery is possible. So I wanted you to see some of the triggers for Mary. Dr. Nicole Hawkins, who is the CEO at Center for Change, did her dissertation on having college-age women look at magazines and images portrayed in the media. This is before social media was available. And that she interviewed several of them before the study and then had them look at images for about 3 to 5 minutes. And just 3 to 5 minutes after, the rates of self-loathing, negative self-esteem, heightened distorted body image was skyrocketing. So according to the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and other associated disorders, the average American model is 5'4" and weighs about 140 pounds. The average woman. The average model is 5'11" and weighs 117 pounds. Over the years, the images portrayed are progressively thinner and is stabilized about 20% below average weights. So one of the struggles right here is comparison. So what dog is this right here, the larger dog? Great Dane, maybe Dalmatian in there a little bit, but Great Dane. And what's this smaller dog right here? Yeah, a little Chihuahua. And this dog is saying, she is so cute and so skinny. I need to go on a diet so I can look just like her. So tell me, dietitians over here, which diet would help this dog to look like this other dog? Yeah, absolutely. It's very possible. No. So how often do we do this? And this may not just be with body image, but comparison, as told and attributed by Theodore Roosevelt, comparison is the thief of joy. So think of, what do you compare? Do you compare your HEDS, or someone has HEDS, someone has HSD, or whatever your diagnosis, whatever your accomplishments? This robs us of joy and disconnects us from ourselves and others. And when we feel that vulnerability and not enough, oftentimes we'll distract by other behaviors to try and not feel. According to a study done by Mellon and Collins, the survey found that 97% of children as young as 12 are now on social media, despite almost 70% saying that social media makes them feel stressed, anxious, and depressed. 2/3 saying that they were worried about the amount of time that they spent on social media. The average daily time spent on apps was 3.56 hours. Now let's flash back just a minute to Dr. Hawkins' study, when after 3 to 5 minutes, that negative self-image skyrocketed. So distorted self-image begins early in life. 42% of 1st to 3rd grade girls want to be thinner. 81% of 10-year-olds are afraid of being fat. 46% of 9 to 11-year-old girls are sometimes or very often on diets. 35 to 57% of adolescent girls engage in crash dieting, fasting, self-induced vomiting, diet pills, and laxatives. In a college campus survey, 91% of the women admitted to controlling their weight through dieting. And then again, according to ANAD, eating disorders have the second highest mortality rate of any mental illness. Number 1 was overdose on opioids. So that is a 10% mortality rate with eating disorders. So I want you to be aware of some of these statistics. So here's a little image I thought was very relatable. So unknowingly giving the scale a power, don't step on it, it makes you cry. I want you to think, when did you first step on a scale and be scared to see the number? Or it affected your worth, that somehow you felt more accomplished or less than when you stepped on a scale? That was very true for me in my high school and early college years. Springer.com found, after researching 33 studies, 315,000 people that were participating around the world. The Wall Street Journal said that the dieting industry is $76 billion a year industry with a 95% failure rate. What other industry continues to grow and skyrocket so much with such a failure rate? The majority of the participants regained the weight back and were on a new diet quickly. 41% of dieters regained the weight, and usually more. I'm going to keep going here. This was really interesting. This is where we're going to start intersecting here. So people with disabilities and eating disorder statistics. Women with physical disabilities are more likely to develop eating disorders. 20 to 30% of adults with eating disorders also have autism. 3 to 10% of children and young people with eating disorders also have autism. 20% of women with anorexia have high levels of autistic traits. And there is some evidence that these women benefit the least from current eating disorder treatments. ADHD is the most commonly misdiagnosed in relation to disordered eating. Now, disordered eating is a myriad of behaviors that may lead to a diagnosable eating disorder. So we want to catch it in the disordered eating phase or even in the thoughts phase. So do you see the crossover right here just with these disability characteristics? We're going to talk a little bit about anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. These are the two most recognized eating disorders. People with anorexia may adopt extreme diets to restrict their food intake to lose weight, while people with bulimia binge eat and then purge to lose weight in some way. You would think that maybe you could spot somebody with anorexia pretty quick. But let me just tell you, eating disorders, less than 6% of eating disorders are medically diagnosed as underweight. So that's a huge misconception. Many people look just like us. So I want you to see the symptoms in green, emaciation or underweight, looking sick, hypothermia in green. These are connecting and overlapping with HEDS, HSD, POTS, and MCAS. Hypothermia is low body temperature, difficulty concentrating and or hyperfocusing, low heart rate, high heart rate, orthostatic hypotension, so our POTS symptoms. And then constipation, abdominal pain, cold hands and feet. With bulimia, some of the same crossovers are here. So what are we going to do about it? We'll talk about that in just a minute. This is probably the largest crossover right here. We talked about it a little bit earlier. This is ARFID, Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. Among eating disorders, ARFID has the greatest overlap with HSD and HEDS. According to NEDA, in a group, this is National Eating Disorder Association, a group of adolescents with eating disorders receiving treatment at a specialist clinic, 14% met the criteria for ARFID. Now, they have a decreased appetite, food avoidance, some sensory struggles with texture, a fear of vomiting, and oftentimes the comorbid presentations, anxiety disorder, autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. So the treatment for ARFID includes dietary care along with cognitive behavioral therapy. And those need to be together to truly help somebody struggling with ARFID. Both are needed. So some of the warning signs, I'm going to skip through these pretty quick so I can keep on some of the solutions because we're seeing a lot of the problems. And if you want slides, let me know, we'll get them to you. So drinking a lot of sodas or coffee in place of food, hiding food, secretive behavior, despite weight loss, talking about how fat they are, defensive or sensitive about their weight loss or eating habits, taking laxatives, diet pills, a tendency to, okay, look at this one in green again. This is a crossover, a tendency to faint, bruise easily, pale, complaining of being cold. Anybody relate to that? Okay, which came first, chicken or the egg? For our population, what started first? Stomach pain, avoiding certain foods because of MCAS or gluten intolerance, maybe dieting to lose weight and feeling like you are not heard or seen or felt gaslighted in the medical community. It's a common feeling when we lack control and validation to try and feel enough in some way or try not to numb out. And I just want to say to each of you, if you're struggling with any of this or anyone you know is, you make sense. And until you believe you make sense, when you start to accept that, that's when you can start to heal. So there's a research article entitled Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome in Young Women with Anorexia Nervosa and Complex Somatic Symptoms. It recommended that screening all patients suspected of an eating disorder for HEDS and HSD due to these significant overlap in signs. So over the last several patients at Center for Change, last several years, I've seen several patients with HEDS and HSD, and I'm sure many undiagnosed patients. I came to the conference last year in Arizona, and I learned so much more than I ever knew. And I went back to my team and I met with the CEO and the dietary program and the medical program. And we decided to start a research team on HEDS and HSD and eating disorders. So we meet once a month, and we have implemented a program where we can refer patients out once they are assessed. So every patient is screened when they come into the Center for Change. So yes, we treat both. Chicken or the egg, we treat both. So it's simple, right? All this crossover, really, really simple. Does this look familiar to you in your journey? This looks familiar to me as I was trying to navigate these. Let me talk about a few tools for healing. Awareness. When we are willing to understand the whys and the belief patterns that we have, and when we feel defensive, I make sense. The defensiveness, I'm scared. What's underneath it? I'm willing to look at it. I'm curious. Curious was mentioned in the last couple presentations. Get curious. Compassion. You all make sense. Whether you're struggling with eating disorder behaviors or body image struggles, we won't be able to move forward until we have compassion for ourselves and others going through it. Habits. The best way to gain more sense of self is to increase showing up for yourself. Make commitments for yourself, as we're talking about habits next, habits here. We need to make habits that we can follow through with, so start small. The book Atomic Habits is fantastic. You can 30 to 60 days in a habit. If you're not following through with it, like your New Year's resolutions within a week, make it smaller and involve more people. Last, embrace your highest self. I take time every day to have peace time for myself, mindfulness, whatever that includes for you. I do this with my son as well. Some type of mindfulness or prayer, mind-body connection is really helpful to then do these, become more aware, become more compassionate, increase your habits and your education. So this is one thing we treat. So at Center for Change, we really work on, if you have not read the book Intuitive Eating, now there are a lot of caveats with all of the dietary restrictions that we all have here. And you can include all those dietary restrictions and connect that mind-body. So reject the diet mentality, honor your hunger, making peace with food, challenge the food police in your head, feel your hunger fullness, discover what it feels like to feel satisfied. You can look at those in just a few minutes. This will be available on the website. So again, we talked about physical, emotional, psychological, mindfulness, and spirituality. It's important to seek professional help. Encourage the united effort in managing, I encourage a united effort in managing the overlap and connection with HEDS, HSD, POTS, and MCAS for an overall well-being and recovery. I had my little boy make this before we came, and I did this with the teens upstairs with the kids. And I gave him 2 pages of different positive affirmations he could write, and we wrote them on here, and I did that with the kids upstairs as well. So as you do positive affirmation with yourself, have that self-compassion, multidisciplinary approach. If you're struggling with these, get a dietitian. If you have an eating disorder, get an eating disorder dietitian, a psychologist. If you're struggling with avoidant restrictive intake disorder, several of the dietitians can work with you if you have a little bit of disordered eating, but it's a not full-blown eating disorder. And a psychologist or a therapist of some sort. So I want you to increase your spiritual and emotional connective tissue. Seek professional support, practice compassion, avoid comparison, surround yourself with supportive people and team, challenge negative thoughts, practice mindful eating, engage in physical activities you enjoy, cultivate body positivity, media consumption, appreciate your body and its functionality where it is, wear clothes that make you feel comfortable and confident. Here's another one. There is hope. Here are some of the resources I used, and thank you for listening.